can't imagine being in that situation where you're so close. You're right there. You're right there. And then you just give up and walk away. I mean, it just seems crazy to me, but I suppose that's the standard sort of experience.
Two traders, Darren and Walter, pull back the curtain on profitable trading systems, consistent money management, and profitable psychological triggers. Welcome to the Two Traders Podcast.
Welcome back to the Two Traders Podcast. It's Walter here, and this is what you're going to hear in episode 93 of Two Traders, which is, of course, part 2 of The Intuitive Trader. Why the first $100 million account is so different from many traders, and this has nothing to do with trading liquidity. 3 ways to improve your trading psychology. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about why most trading forums have this type of psychology subsection in the forum, and this is almost universal across the board. On the internet, you'll see this. How you can tell what trading stage you're in by looking at this one thing. And Darren shows you why most traders are wrong about estimating this one critical aspect of your trading. And finally, we'll reveal for you 2 authors that you should definitely be aware of if this highlights some of those interesting concepts regarding trading intuition for you. You should definitely be aware of these 2 authors, and we'll post those links for you as well. So all of this and more in this episode of the Two Traders Podcast.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, I think it's psychological. I think that it's what you're saying. Like some traders, if they're compounding their account, they might get to a certain size where they're just uncomfortable. And a lot of traders, and I do this, is can you look at the trade? Can you change your platform so that you don't see the money fluctuations in your open positions, and instead you just look at it from sort of a pip point of view, a points point of view. So you're looking for, you're playing this as a game, and you're just looking for how many points am I going to get out of this trade? And because there is that block for a lot of traders. I know several traders that can build an account up to a certain level, and then they kind of hit the rails. That's it. They run into the wall, and they can't get beyond a certain level, so they have to keep doing the same thing over and over again. And that may be the case where if you're trading a certain size, or you're managing money or something like that, there's that mental block where you did really well when you were trading your $20,000 account, but now all of a sudden you've got this $600,000 account or this $2 million account, and the risk on each trade, that 1% risk is enormous, and each pip is worth a lot. So I think it helps if you can remove that, as best your ability, remove that money from the equation, and don't think about the trade in terms of what it's worth now in money, but rather the execution, and focus on the points and the rules and the strategy itself. I mean, I know it's hard. It's easy to say that, but I'll never forget my friend Colin when he first started trading with the fund. They didn't actually tell him how much he was trading, but he worked out that he eventually learned that he worked out that he was trading 750 million, and that's it. And it was like he said every pip was a Ferrari or something like that. It was like he couldn't like, it just really messed with his head, that he would see these pips, it would tick up and tick down, and it was just, the amount of money that was moving up and down was just blowing his mind. So, and I think that's why they tried to hide it from him. But yeah, so I mean, it's one of those things where I think being aware of your ceiling too is an issue. And where does that come from? Do you have a ceiling? Is there a certain size account that you're comfortable trading with, and when it gets beyond that, you don't? You're not comfortable. Well, what's the solution for that? Do you break it up into multiple accounts? Do you build up an account to a certain amount and then start all over again? Or do you work on those beliefs? All of that kind of comes into it in this being self-aware. The novice trader thinks, oh, well, I'd love to trade a $3 million account. That's awesome. But then once you get there, once you get to the point where you're trading much more than you ever thought you would, it changes it, because you're not looking at the same thing. When you were trading that system in Forex Tester, you were looking at trying to execute the strategy. And now that you're trading all this money, it becomes more about the money. And I think that's a big one for people, where they just don't get. And some traders are fine with that. They pull out their money every week or every month, and then they start all over again with the same account balance. and they don't compound, and that's cool. If that's the way they want to approach that, that's cool. They're aware of that. They understand that that's an issue for them. I don't know. I mean, it's a tricky thing to get through. If this is, and I think a lot of us have this. We all have this the ceiling that we're comfortable. We're not going beyond that level of trading can be uncomfortable for a lot of traders. And so, to me, the question's why.
Are these issues because certain people just have the right psychological makeup before they start trading, or is it a case of the people who deal with these issues best have basically put more time and study and basically worked on their psychology? Or is it, just a natural, some people are just naturally more gifted in this element of trading?
I think that the vast majority of people run into a ceiling. So like 99.5% of the people will run into a ceiling. Although I will allow that I believe it could be cultural. What I mean by that is that there are some cultures where there's this focus of just doing, chopping wood, just doing the task. The focus is the task at hand. I think those cultures have an advantage when it comes to trading because I think that's the key. And I've said it before, I'm a strong believer in this idea of trading like it's a game of strategy and not trading because you want to make enough money to buy a house. These are the sorts of things that I think where people get into trouble. So to me, I think, so I'll agree with you. I'll say, which I think is what you're getting at. Working on yourself is the key. Working on yourself, becoming self-aware, using things that make sense to you to uncover your issues and try and create a better mindset for success. That's the key. But I will allow that I suspect that in some cultures, and I'm talking about those cultures who have this approach of just focusing on the task at hand, when that's a real central theme in that culture, I think those guys have an advantage. I do. And perhaps people from cultures where, you grow up in an environment where your family gives you a lot of self-worth and tells you that you're worth it, and that that's another thing that I suppose could probably help, because I think a lot of what's going on with traders is they feel like they're not worth it. They're not worthy of that much money, or they're not worthy of that much profit, or they're not worthy of trading an account that large, so they kind of self-destruct. That could be an element too, I suppose. And that the only way of discovering those feelings is to, like you say, work on yourself and work through it. And another really cool tool is to have a trading buddy that you talk to, or record your trades, record your thoughts of your trades, or write them down like you do with your journal. These are ways that you can get another perspective, whether writing it down, record and looking at video. You can use Jing. I'll put a link in the show notes for people. It's a free tool where you can record videos and save them, so you can go back and look at your approach. And having a trading buddy that you talk to every week and go over your trades is another way to be accountable, and for them to give them their perspective and say, well, do you ever notice that whenever you do this always seems to happen to you? So these are the sorts of things I think that can work for people.
Do you think this is kind of a hard thing for people to grasp? This idea of self-examination and psychology has been around for quite a long time, and there's a lot written about it, but it's not popular. And do you think this is kind of hard for people to believe in, that it has as much effect as it does? I think
it depends. I think it depends on where you're coming from. I think in a place like the United States, we have these people like Oprah and whatever. I mean, self-help is its own religion, really. So it's already well established in the culture. But maybe in some place like I don't know, maybe in South Africa, it's not that big of a deal, and people don't look at it. Or maybe in Vietnam, it's not part of the culture to look at it that way. I don't know, but I mean,
yeah. If you look at the most popular trading forums, the psychology section is always the smallest and always the least active. Why is that? Is it just because we're generally lazy, or is it because we've just kind of got an inbuilt belief that regardless of all of the study, no matter what we know, people just prefer to believe that it's not that big a deal. What's going on there?
That's a great question. I've surveyed thousands of traders, and I have these data. And I kind of asked them, what are you interested in? And what you said fits perfectly with the data that I have, which is, not everyone is really interested in the psychology. But I have a theory. And my theory is that it's something that comes up when you reach a certain level with your trading. So, in other words, focus is on the system when you first start trading, and then later on, the focus shifts to you and to your psychology. I think that's a later stage of development. That's my theory, is that the traders interested in that are more advanced traders, and they've kind of hit the point where they're not so focused on the perfect pattern or the perfect exit or any of that stuff. They're at that point where they realize that they can make money if they execute their system flawlessly, but they're not doing it for some reason. Something's getting in the way, and they've come to the conclusion that it's them. And I think they're right.
Yeah, and this is why all the studies suggest that it takes longer to become a successful trader than we believe, because you don't get to that point where you kind of pull it all together with you as being part of the system, if you like. I guess that's what's going on. Most people quit after a year or 2 or 3 years, and they don't kind of get to that stage where they kind of put the cherry on the cake, if you like.
Yeah, it's true. I think that's part of it. I think it's part of the deal. They it's almost like that guy. I don't know if you've seen that movie Into the Wild, where there was a bridge that would get him over that river, just down the road. He wasn't far from survival. He literally had a way to get out of his situation. It was less than a mile away, but he didn't know. It was kind of like he didn't realize that it was right there for the taking. But instead it was a tragic, he died, and it was a tragic story. And I suppose that's the same thing. I mean, I believe you when you say that most traders give up or quit or whatever. It's just, I can't imagine being in that situation where you're so close. You're right there, and then you just give up and walk away. I mean, it just seems crazy to me, but I suppose that's the standard sort of experience. And so I would say that's tragic. That's tragic to be so close, to want it so bad, and be so close to your goal, to getting to where you want to be, and just kind of throwing up your hands and say, well, that didn't work out. I'm going to move on to flipping properties now, or whatever the next thing is, whatever the next.
Yeah, it's kind of a not being able to see the wood for the trees kind of scenario, isn't it? And I think what you said earlier about having a trading buddy, I think so many of us just trade. Even we might even be part of a trading group or something, but any sort of really deep examination of what's happening with our own trading is kind of papered over, and people tend to resort to just posting entries and trade results rather than sort of any sort of deep examination of how they're trading and what they're doing. And I think a lot of people would get on a lot better if they had someone who they were sort of physically in contact with once a week, and they sat down and sort of talked through the actual trades, and that person was saying, well, what happened there, you should have hit TP there and you didn't, what happened, and kind of posing those difficult questions that we probably don't like to pose ourselves, or we don't really do in the sort of online media field, really.
Yeah, absolutely, no doubt. I mean, it's just because the focus is on the system. Like, everything that you're told in trading is about having this magic system, and just it's a magic black box, the magic way to find the path to riches. Everything is so focused on that. It just seems so obvious. It's such an easy thing. You press a few buttons and you're off on your way. But it turns out it's just not. That's not really the story, is it? It's about dealing with what you have inside your head and getting over that first. So yeah. So I guess to wrap up, I would say, yeah. I mean, I think journaling, I know you're a big fan of that, recording videos of your trades, having someone to talk to and sit down every week to go over this stuff. Those are all really important tools that you can use. I'll also post some books down there if you guys are interested in the subconscious research. There's an author that I find fascinating, and his work into this area is quite good, and he has several books and CDs and stuff like that if you want to listen to them. So that would be another resource. What about you, Darren? Any other thoughts on this?
I really like Michael Mubassin. I really like his books because if you're not really heavily into psychology, he puts it over in a way that's really easy to take on and understand. So yeah, I'd look for some of his books, and there's some YouTube videos out there as well.
Okay, great. So we'll link those up in the show notes too. Michael Mubassin. Okay. Anything else?
No, that's it for me, mate.
Okay, cool. All right, great. Thanks so much for your time, Darren. We'll see you next time.
Okay, Walter. Nice talking again.
Bye.